Welcome into FFPC live draft coverage. Sunday night's our main event. Tuesday nights we cover Fantasy Pros Championship. Today we're bringing you kind of a special. Let me get this draft board better on screen. But tonight we're going to have a little bit of a special presentation, a live FFPC Dynasty startup draft. I'm your host, Aidan Corey. Joining me as always, Dave Tripoli. Dave, you excited to cover a Dynasty startup? A little change of pace from us.
Something a little different, change it up a little bit, get a little flair because we got a busy couple weeks coming up. So get something different on the stream and see how it goes.
Yeah, we're excited to see this Justin Jefferson and Bijan Robinson off the board. Terp, we already have a question in the chat, and we're definitely eager to hear questions as a Dynasty draft. We're intrigued to see the flow of it. But Terp, the question is, let me get that up there, is will JSN be better than Tyler Lockett by next year? I think this is a softball question for you to start. We're already hitting the chat, and I think he gave you a softball off the bat. What do you
Absolutely, yes. I mean, I think he would have been there better this year. The injury obviously has messed up a lot of things. I mean, Pete Carroll can say whatever he wants, but JSN ain't going to be around for a little bit. I don't see how he's back week 1, week 2, even week 3. I think this could be an after bye week type of situation, which is going to be a disaster to all fantasy owners, especially ones that spend early dynasty picks on them.
Obviously in redraft formats, the injury hurts more. I don't think it obviously is going to have any effect on his dynasty ADP. I mean, Tyler Lockett, you've been kind of predicting, not you specifically, Dave, but just people predicting the downfall seemingly every year, and it just never comes. But eventually he's going to kind of fall off the cliff. His age is getting up there. Jackson Smith-Njigba, obviously, first-round capital was invested by the Seahawks. When healthy, was one of the best receivers in college. I agree with you. If he was healthy going to this year, and even the wrist injury, I don't think should, hopefully not, affect him too much. He probably is better than Tyler Lockett this year. Terp, A.J. Brown goes 5th overall, and I'm going to be going to you kind of on all these Eagles outlooks throughout this draft. A.J. Brown normally goes 6th overall, so nothing crazy here, but investing in A.J. Brown 5th overall in Dynasty pick, I mean, you got to, right? Still a young receiver, has one of the best quarterbacks in the league. No concern at all, though, for you with Devonta Smith eating into this thing. You think this offense is going to be able to sustain 2 elite receivers for the years to come?
I do. I mean, the reason mostly because they really have nobody threatening behind them. Obviously, you have Dallas Goedert, tight end position, but we'll just keep him out of this for a second. There's no wide receiver 3 young potential guy like a JSN is kind of like in Seattle. So when you have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, I mean, I love Devonta Smith. It's hard not to, but A.J. Brown has that mojo with Jalen Hurts, obviously, being good friends. That definitely helps things. I don't see there being any cliff falling off anytime soon for either of these guys. This offense in a tougher schedule this year and game scripts that will be a lot more, they're going to have to score to win games instead of just beating, teams up like they did last year with the just horrific schedule they had. A.J. Brown, I think he's a top 5 dynasty pick and definitely a guy I'd be targeting this early.
CeeDee Lamb and Amon-Ra St. Brown follow him. We are primarily following ADP through the course of this draft. I believe, looking at it, in the last 30 days, I have the Dynasty ADP up here from FFPC Dynasty Startups, and I believe this is the first one. But the first 7 picks were the first 7 guys in ADP, but 8th overall, Jahmyr Gibbs goes. He normally has been going at the 201. He goes at the 108 today. I'm a little bit surprised that he's not a clear first-round pick, a rookie running back who was taken 12th overall. Just looking at just this year, but then for the years to come, you look at what running backs have done when drafted in the top 12 of the NFL draft their first year fantasy-wise, and it's pretty consistently top 15 RB finishes. And Gibbs is explosive. That offense is ascending, and I can't help but think if the Lions ever do really maybe as a team in the future that could only invest in a quarterback beyond to try and essentially upgrade over Jared Goff, I think that could be down the line, whether that be by a blockbuster trade or by in the draft moving up. They're a team that's on the rise, an offense that's on the rise, and Jahmyr Gibbs, I think I would lock in as a first-round dynasty pick.
Before we went on the air last night, it was one of the questions I asked you, where is Jahmyr Gibbs going in dynasty startups? And I was actually very surprised when he told me like right around the 1-2 turn, early second round. I expect him to be higher, and this is pretty much where I think he should go. I mean, we always go back to the draft when the Lions, front office was how excited they were to get him. Young, talented kid, size is a question, obviously, but dynasty-wise, I mean, he has to be right behind Bijan Robinson, right around Christian McCaffrey, in the top picks. So no issues whatsoever. Really like where he's going here. Depending on some of the guys that went after him are good too, like Christian McCaffrey, obviously. But this is more of a long-term thing, and Jahmyr Gibbs is going right where he should.
We said we're going to have some seasoned Dynasty veterans on the stream to share their thoughts on Dynasty. We're going to have some people who are drafting live in this league hop on the stream to discuss their picks. Bring in our first guest. He goes by Scoundrel, a seasoned Dynasty player. We're excited to have his thoughts. Sir, welcome to the show.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for having me.
We needed your expertise.
First question.
I'll give you what I can without giving away my secrets.
I like that.
Wanted to ask you a quick question that me and Terp were discussing kind of pre-show and wanted your thoughts on is when you have some of these running backs, let's use Christian McCaffrey as an example. He goes at the 110. How do you personally weigh his age? And kind of, we usually see those running backs drop off at age 27, which McCaffrey is, at least in recent memory. That could change, obviously. So we've seen some running backs beat that. So how do you weigh that and that perceived drop-off versus what we've seen from him and the role he's going to play in San Francisco for assumably years to come?
I think it really depends on the kind of Dynasty player you are, right? Like some guys draft for the long term, which is probably what you should be doing. A lot of guys that get into Dynasty in these startups are coming in for sometimes the first time, and they're drafting to win immediately the first year. So they don't really pay attention to that type of stuff. I think with somebody like McCaffrey, not only do you have to take into account age, you got to take into account injury history and the fact that I think he's probably going to be in a bigger timeshare with Mitchell than people think he is, at least to start the year. I think they're going to try to conserve his workload until the end of the year and then turn him loose once it gets go time. So yeah, it's easier with they always say you should go hard on receivers early in Dynasty because those are the guys that play till they're 32, 33 years old. So my personal is usually I'll grab a lot of receivers early. Oops, I lost you. Sorry.
We still got you. You're good.
All right. I'll mainly target superstar, rock star, and I'll trade up for them. Receivers like Chase and Jefferson, AJ Brown, St. Brown is my current favorite. And then I try to grab maybe some veteran running backs later on in the rounds myself. Unless you got somebody that's coming in like Bijan right off the bat, comes in at 21 years old. That is ready to take off for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, then absolutely. McCaffrey's a tough one because he's going to be a stud, but I don't know. That's
Cliff's coming.
1.08 in this draft is a little early for me for a dynasty.
You mentioned kind of the receivers, right? That's your approach is you're kind of aggressive in trying to get one of those superstar receivers. Right now in dynasty drafts, where do you see that tier break? Is it Amon-Ra St. Brown? He goes at the 107. CeeDee Lamb, AJ Brown, Wilson, Chase, and Jefferson are ahead of him, or are there some other names after the fact that the Chris Olave's, Tyreek Hills that you think you would classify kind of in this similar tier to them?
It's interesting to me this year the how many wide receiver twos are going off the board so early. People like Waddle and Devonta Smith and Higgins right up there in the first couple rounds, which is probably deserved. But I don't remember a number year where there's been that many wide receiver twos on their teams going this early. But yeah, I think probably the first tier break for me, Jefferson, Chase, St. Brown, AJ Brown. That's probably first tier for me. I'm not sold on. I'm not 100% sold on Lamb yet. Wilson is going to depend, right? How much longer is
Rodgers
going to play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then who ends up there afterwards? So I think my order on this board would have been Jefferson, Chase, probably St. Brown, and then AJ Brown. And I think that's a tier break for me right there for dynasty anyways. Maybe not for redraft, but
For sure. No, that makes complete sense. I want to ask you here, because people who are tuning in who maybe aren't familiar with Dynasty startups, and the ADP is drastically different. Kyle Pitts goes at the 206. Obviously, still an incredibly young tight end. He's only, a year removed from one of the best rookie tight end seasons we've ever seen. But when you're drafting him as a tight end 2 overall, tight end premium, I understand that at the 206. Is that a little bit rich for you? Do you think that's where he's properly being drafted with the concerns of Arthur Smith's scheme, or in Dynasty you bank on eventually, if the Falcons keep struggling, that's a new scheme that hopefully utilizes him way better than they do now?
Yeah, 2.0. What is this, a 210 where he went in this draft?
2.6. He went at 2.6 tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what I'm looking at? I actually have Fantasy Mojo's ADP up.
Yep. He normally goes at the
yeah, that's too early for me. I mean, we already know what's going on with him with Arthur Smith's offense, and it probably looks like Arthur Smith's not going anywhere for a couple years.
Terrible.
Yeah, that's way too early for me. I wouldn't be taking him that early. I can't. I just don't see it happening. They're not going to throw the ball enough, and he's not going to be. What is he?
Are you in or out on Kyle Pitts in redraft?
I'm out this year. Yeah,
even if he falls to like a 6th round ADP.
6th round.
You might get tickled a little bit.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. What's he going in right now? Right now,
not in the 6th round, but I've seen him fall a couple times in the 6th.
Let me pull up a redraft ADP right now. I don't know where he's going at. 6th round, I'm probably in. I got a couple favorite tight ends this year for redraft that I'm in on. That I'm kind of skipping over the big boys this year unless somebody falls.
I'm with you there. If it's not one of the top 3, I'm out.
Unless it's Waller. I mean, I was getting Waller back when Fantasy Pros started, the tournament started a couple months ago. I got Waller in the 6th a couple times. But now
I got him in the bunch in the 5th and 6th, and I thought I was a hero. Now you look at him, you're like, I took him.
Now he's going in the 4th, and it's not worth it. Well, I wouldn't say it's not worth it. He probably
depends on
the value is gone for sure.
The value is definitely dead. It's just a question of, are you buying in that he could be the tight end 1, which most are.
Pitt's currently going at 5.1 according to Darren. Average draft position for the last 2 days in the Fantasy Pros Championship. Yeah, I'm probably skipping him there. There's too many wide receivers I like in that area.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm probably skipping Pitts and waiting for trying to catch Freiermuth and Njoku, somebody like that.
So you guys are both out on Kyle Pitts at both his redraft and Dynasty ADP, which is never a good sign for Kyle Pitts and how he's being used in that Atlanta offense. Sandra, I wanted to ask you quick. Jackson Smith and Jigba goes at the 302. Let me get Mojo up. I believe that's right around where he's going. Usually goes at the 305. So right kind of on ADP. Is he the clear-cut rookie wide receiver 1 for these startup drafts that you're taking, or does Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnson, Zay Flowers have a case in your mind?
I'm sorry, you talking to me or Dave?
I'm talking
definitely
to you.
You're the expert.
You're talking to me.
I talk to Terp enough on these shows. I'm talking to you.
Yeah, JSN is the clear-cut Dynasty 1 for me out of this class. Rookie. Lockett's not going to be around much longer. He's going to slide right into that position. I'm not taking much of him in redraft this year because I think it might take him a year to get his snaps. But he's definitely my wide receiver 1. I'm out on Addison altogether this year for redraft anyways. But who else? What are the other ones?
Quentin Johnson and Zay Flowers, I would say probably the only ones I personally would even think of.
I think Flowers has got an immense talent, but yeah, we'll see what Monken does with that offense, right? Mm-hmm. It's that one's a toss-up, but with Beckham's probably going to retire after this year. He's probably got last year in him. Bateman's still there.
Mark
Yeah.
Andrews not going anywhere.
Yeah. Yep. I like Flowers. I might put him as my number 2 this year. JSN 1. What was the other one? There's one more.
Quentin Johnson. It says it
Don't
all.
love the player, love the spot. That's the hard part.
Yeah, I love the spot. I don't love the player. Exactly. He's probably the bottom of the list for me.
Okay. Can we keep it with Seattle? Because Kenneth Walker just went about a round above ADP. He went at the 306 in this draft. He normally goes, I believe, if I'm looking at it right, like the 405. And then Zach Charbonnet. It's probably a weird situation for Dynasty owners because I'm sure people who had Kenneth Walker last year in Dynasty were feeling great. And if you're doing these drafts super early, you're feeling real good. And then the draft hits and Zach Charbonnet goes in the second round. So what do you make of this Seattle backfielder in Dynasty? Or just in startups, are you completely avoiding it? What is your opinion there?
This is one where I got to go flip a coin. I have no idea. With this, you never know with Pete Carroll, right? He drafts Penny, and then but he has who was the back that was just a rock star? Well, he always plays he was playing who's the guy that got hurt all the time?
Chris Carson.
He's playing Carson. What was Carson, like a 6th, 7th rounder?
Yeah.
Over Penny, who he drafted in like the second round for. Carroll doesn't give a damn about anything. He just kind of picks his guy and rolls with it. But the thing is that he usually does focus on one guy, right? He doesn't, There's not a whole lot of timeshare historically in his backfields, but you can't deny
the question of who that guy is. That's the problem.
Yeah, exactly. And Walker's talented. He's fantastic. But so is Charbonnet.
Where's your mind at?
Yeah, right. I just got off work, so I'm at a loss for that one. I can't even form a reasonable opinion on that one. I have nothing to back up any feelings with on that one whatsoever.
I got one more question for you, and then we'll let you get going further relaxing after you get home from work. Lamar Jackson goes at the QB6, which is lower than he normally goes, obviously, that we've seen in redraft. Is this just concern about how long he can hold up compared to guys like Herbert, Joe Burrow, Mahomes obviously is going to always be your clear one, but you kind of see Lamar consistently going over Herbert and Joe Burrow in redraft, but he doesn't go ahead of them here in this Dynasty startup. And actually by ADP, he also normally goes behind Trevor Lawrence. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on Lamar Jackson and maybe some reasoning as why he goes a little lower in Dynasty.
I think the whole field behind Jackson right now is one of speculation, one of like nobody's really sure what's going to be happening in that. And which it's interesting because they just signed him to a long-term contract, so he's not going anywhere. Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure why it would be flipped like that because he's going to be around for a long time. I guess it's more he didn't do very well last year, and people are unsure with the new offense coming up. Would be my guess. I'm not sure it's deserved or not, but I mean, yeah.
I appreciate you hopping on. We don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you for coming and sharing your expertise. We'll let you get going. Scoundrel, ladies and gentlemen, an experienced Dynasty player.
Enjoy your night.
Thanks, guys. See you soon.
Terp draft keeps on rolling on. Stephon Diggs goes at the 402. Kind of want to talk to you. There's part of it. Scoundrel did some reasoning, and sometimes a lot of it affects kind of your game plan going into your Dynasty startup drafts. In terms of, are you trying to be aggressive early or trying to build for the long-term kind of vision? But is there any thought to you maybe entering a Dynasty startup? We're seeing longer and longer athlete longevity, right? You're seeing guys be dominant. Look at Derrick Henry as a perfect example of a guy who, by all metrics that you've seen in the past years, that's someone who should have fallen off a cliff already. You're seeing kind of receivers continue producing later and later. So in some ways, do you think for Dynasty purposes, I completely understand the idea of targeting youth, but the idea of getting guys like Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, as guys who have many, many good years possibly left in them in elite, in Stephon Diggs' case, elite offenses, or with Adams and Kupp case, likely with quarterbacks who are going to pepper them with targets. Is that something as a value in these Dynasty drafts, in your opinion?
I think there's a value. I mean, it just like he said, it comes down to what mentality you're going to use. Some people just come in here and they just draft, the best available talent, like they're in redraft, and sometimes that works out. I mean, you try to obviously get the most young upside team that you can get within reason, but taking a guy like Cup or Diggs or Devontae Adams can definitely get you some short-term goals and maybe for the next couple of years. I mean, is it something that's set in stone? No. Could the cliff be coming? Absolutely. Of the elite production that they've been doing the last couple of years. But like I said, every mentality is different. You can come in these drafts and pretty much do anything you want. I mean, it could be right. People could criticize you, but you have to look at this as a year-by-year thing and just try to build the best team possible, and obviously look at the future because you might win one year and then everything just can go haywire and then you could be stuck real quick. So I mean, if I was entering a dynasty league, I would probably do it that way. And a lot of people I'm sure would criticize me, but I mean, just try to get the best available guys, not getting too many guys close to the cliff, but try to draft the best team possible.
Question for you, Terp, from the chat. How likely do you see Anthony Richardson being a top 5 quarterback this year?
Not very likely. I mean, I like Anthony Richardson. I have some Anthony Richardson. I'm not overexposed to him. I'd say he's probably a little above the field on my, projection list. But top 5 is a big number. I mean, you have to have so much rushing. He has to be Justin Fields of the second half last year to get there. Mm-hmm. Is it possible? It's possible. No Jonathan Taylor if they do trade him. I don't see it. I mean, you're talking about he has to get above Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Herbert, Jackson, Fields, Burrow, Lawrence. Those 8 guys right there, I mean, I don't see how he gets up. It has to be the perfect storm for him to get in the top 5. Long term, it's possible if his passing ability continues to evolve. And I trust, the new coach. I mean, he came from Philly. You saw what he did with Jalen Hurts. But they don't have Jalen Hurts type of weapons yet. So top 5 this year, I don't think so. But future, I could see him, being very highly drafted.
Anthony Richardson in Dynasty normally goes as QB9, so we should see him getting drafted sometime in the next couple of rounds. Without a doubt, I think he's just a great upside Dynasty pick with the rushing upside. It's just kind of Shane Steichen, I think, is a key. But you mentioned, speak of the devil, there he goes at the 501. You mentioned Jonathan Taylor, kind of putting aside Dynasty talk just in general. We can use it. The recent update is they're giving him permission to seek a trade. Per reports, 6 teams have kind of had discussions with the Colts. 2 supposedly made offers. I've
heard some teams, and some of those teams very much worry me. Number 1 being my Philadelphia Eagles. I cannot believe that to be true. There's no way Jonathan Taylor is coming somewhere and not getting a bump in pay. Could the Eagles be that team? Yeah, but all that, DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, Gainwell would be just, see you. Thanks for coming, guys. We're at the jump. So Miami's another tricky one. Obviously, Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Devin H. Hopefully he doesn't go there. What are the other options? I don't know. Kansas City would be the best personal option, obviously, for fantasy. And just where does Jonathan Taylor go if he goes to Kansas City? Where does he go if he goes to Miami?
I mean, he what? So before all of the holdout nonsense, he was a late first. Let's say a trade goes to Kansas City or Miami. In Dynasty, he's a first round lock, I'd say. In redraft, he's probably top 6.
Yeah, but Jonathan Taylor, is he just a little bit better of a Nick Chubb? Can he catch the ball? Like, have you seen that, being able to do that?
I'm not talking about like where he should be going. I'm just saying he goes up there because of the team next to his name. If someone sees Jonathan Taylor in Kansas City, his stock skyrockets just because of the fact that he's in that offense.
Oh my God. He's going to be, like you said, you're 100% right. He's going to be probably right around Bijan Robinson, Austin Eckler in drafts. Whether he should be there is a different story, but like every year there's always a fluky wacky dynamic that gets thrown in the drafts. We've seen it over the years with the Ezekiel Elliott holdout, and when Austin Eckler was hurt a couple of years ago when he had his monster season. We've seen freaky stuff happen to where Jonathan Taylor, people have passed on him 3 times in drafts. I've seen him get into the 4th round in drafts. I've passed on him in the 3rd round a bunch of times. And sometimes I took him, but because, really, you stare at him, you're just like, is he really going to sit out the season? Like, if he goes, could you imagine, like, you get a 3rd or 4th round Jonathan Taylor share, and he goes to KC? You're doing backflips up and down the street.
The thing is, both of those teams' run game, and I'm sure probably because of the pressures their passing offenses respectively put on defenses, both of their rushes, both of their rushing games last year were pretty solid, right? Jeff Wilson, Mostert,
Pacheco was
solid
good
numbers. Pacheco was solid. It's sometimes a wonder is theoretically with like Kansas City, Miami, who knows if they're blowing teams out, that could be more carries for him. They could go more rush heavy. Do you think he gets traded? That's the question.
No.
Because I think it's just a bluff by the Colts. If some team ponies up a 1st-round pick, they'll do it, but no team's going to do that.
What team? It's not just a 1st-round pick. It's a 1st-round pick, and he's not just going to come and hang out. He wants to get paid.
Yeah.
He's going to want to pay bump for at least a year, if not multiple years. And what team has the assets at this point that wants to give him up for a long-term investment like that? Like, people keep saying the Eagles, but like, they just paid Jalen Hurts. A.J. Brown's got a deal. Devonta Smith's deal's coming up. Yeah, I know they got a lot of cheap pieces on defense, but like, it's not needed. I don't believe that at all. None. Miami, I think a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. I really think that by the time it's all said and done, he stays in Indianapolis, which I hope that's where he stays, because at this point, so late in redraft and so late in best ball and all the other obviously fantasy pros that I've entered, I just don't want a crazy dynamic, coming in and making things, extra crazy, because Jonathan Taylor going to one of these top teams would be next level, except if he goes to Cincinnati. I've said it a million times. I'm going to say it again. Still the nut spot out there. It's still a spot I want to see Leonard Fournette go. Still a spot I wouldn't mind CEH getting to if things get haywire in Kansas City. And if Jonathan Taylor wants to go there, it makes a lot of sense. Give Burrow a little bit more, protection with a big time running back, not a dusty Joe Mixon. Maybe.
The question in the chat is, where do you see JT going if he does leave? We've kind of both said dynasty purposes 1st round and redraft 1st round. It's just a question of where in the 1st round. And I tend to lean the top half of the 1st round. I think he pushes past Eckler and I think would push CMC. I think for sure passes Bijan. Now, I think every draft would be different, but I think that would
be fun to see. I'll tell you that. If he does go to one of those teams.
The question is, do you think he plays for the Colts? Because okay, so you don't think he's getting traded, but do you think he plays?
I don't think he has an option. Like, this is what we said the same thing about Barkley and Jacobs and all these guys. If he comes into camp, let's say he doesn't get traded, nothing happens, no team gives what they want, and they decide to keep him. He wants to get paid. That's his ultimate goal. Where's the best chance for him to get paid? The Colts. Or ball out for the Colts and then after the season, somebody will trade for you. When people have more cap space and teams are different, and you see a team like the Bears who might be ready to win now next year, who has that, extra cap space, that would be like, all right, we'll bring Jonathan Taylor in, we'll pay him some money and we'll go for it. But now it's like you're kind of selling yourself short. We're talking about 2 weeks to the season start. Kansas City opens up two weeks from today, 2 weeks from tomorrow. I don't see them making a move for a guy. And what's he going to sit out a week or two, get acclimated? You give up a high round draft pick and pay a guy. You want him out there now. And by the looks of Jonathan Taylor, I don't know if he's ready to get out there now.
Terp, speaking of running backs who were kind of involved in holdout situations, albeit brief, Saquon Barkley, this is just a personal opinion. In the 1st round, he goes at the 112. Is a bit, maybe not odd to me. I wouldn't make that pick personally. This is just a random thought by me. It's just, he's 26. He's getting up there. Already had ankle injuries. Obviously tore the knee up. It was good last year, but we saw him fade down the stretch. Who knows where he's going to be playing next year? if he's going to stay with the Giants, who kind of have him as a focal point. There's just a lot of uncertainty with Saquon and someone who I could see wearing down quickly. And I know we'll talk about maybe Derrick Henry down the line. There are guys who kind of have dissuaded this notion of running backs slowing down, but Saquon seems to me, with the injury history, the uncertainty surrounding him, I'm surprised he's still a pretty consistent, per Mojo's ADP, and then today's draft, a first-round fantasy pick.
I'm very surprised by it too. I mean, it's like you said, the wear and tear is starting to get up there. I mean, he's still young. He obviously still has not got paid, so there's no job security. And a team that has him on the franchise, I know they signed him for a little bit of money. It wasn't whatever it was, a little bit of a bonus. But to take him in the first round of a dynasty seems a little risky to me. I'm not saying that's where he shouldn't go, but you're looking at guys that get drafted after him, like a Breece Hall type of situation. I know he's coming off a major injury, but it seems like it makes a little more sense. Chris Olave, obviously, young, talented, with Derek Carr, obviously an upgrading quarterback. It makes a lot of sense for that team. But the Barkley pick, dynasty-wise, if this was redraft, best ball, great pick. But dynasty-wise, I think it's a little risky because, like you said, the wear and tear is going to start. I mean, he's never had a year when he had anybody behind him that was actually worth anything. And he definitely doesn't have that this year. So the treads are going to start, wearing down soon. And that could be a risk for, a dynasty draft.
I think the most interesting strategy with Dynasty is trying to thread the needle between it's not impossible. Many people do it. It's the toughest one to do is thread the needle between kind of building for the future, but also executing kind of a win now competitive team in the future. And that obviously takes a lot of drafting youth, hitting on some late sleepers, and then drafting a couple of the right, maybe aging stars or aging fantasy producers with kind of a knowledge that they might only have so many years. And I say that because I'm looking at Team 8. They start off Gibbs, Smith, Metcalf, Johnston, even Damian Pearson. You have Young, and then you go Darren Waller. Honestly, that's a fine pick for the build of this team because Waller probably, if healthy, which is going to always be a big if, probably has 2, maybe 3 years with the Giants and very well could be their lead target. But at minimum, again, health permitting, has 1 year probably going to have of owning an elite target share in New York. I just wanted to point them out. I think it's just a very interesting strategy, hard to execute, but relative to their build, I just wanted to point out I like the Darren Waller pick. He's a guy who probably does not have a ton of dynasty value beyond the next couple of years.
I agree. I mean, but like you said, you got to try to thin, there's thin margins, and you want to try to not just pick all young guys because then you're setting yourself up for a losing, beginning and down the road. But people no matter what they said, all the best dynasty owners out there, they like the money now. Yeah, I know they're building teams and they're trying to build assets and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, Darren Waller seems like a very good pick in a tight end, premium format because obviously, like you said, he's a year or two left. So, you can't always just take the youngest guys, the Dalton Kincaids of the world, the Sam Laportas of the world in every single draft. Could it be the wrong pick? It might be. But Dalton Kincaid and Sam Laporta might not be as good as everybody think they are this year or next year. I mean, who knows? And then you're wasting probably a potential top 3 tight end year in Darren Waller 2 years in a row.
And I'm not just saying this because they're slated to appear at some point, hopefully in the next about 10, 15 minutes, they're gonna hop on here. Team 4, the Banana Stand, is doing a similar thing. Garrett Wilson, Drake London, Pollard, Watson, and Ramondre, pretty much youth right there. Some really talented youth at that. Some of them, obviously Ramondre's stock is taking a hit with the Zeke signing. And then 6th round, they're taking the value. And Amari Cooper, wide receiver 33, is maybe kind of a – yeah.
I have a question for you. What is Christian Watson's dynasty ADP?
Yeah, I mean, thank God these guys are our guests coming on because Christian Watson and Tony Pollard on the same team, that will get me excited.
I can't stand up right now. I'm that excited.
Okay. 4-4. 4-4 is Watson. So pretty much right on a little later, actually. 409.
I'm surprised he's not a little higher.
It just is interesting watching these, and I think
4 years old. So I mean,
in some ways, you think we would wrongly assume that some of the guys rising in redraft, especially if they're young, would see kind of similar bumps in dynasty, but that's not always the case. Clearly,
I honestly kind of like where Christian Watson is falling right now in drafts. I wish that I would see nothing in preseason. I hope Jordan Love and them guys sit this week, that he wouldn't have that big Romeo Doubs, type of breakout preseason game.
Mm-hmm.
So his value would kind of stay around where he's going now, and he wouldn't move up too much. And so far, so good. Hopefully survive one more game this weekend and he doesn't play, and we should be good getting to the later drafts, the main events, fantasy pros, best ball, whatever. And even the dynasty startups. I mean, Christian Watson should be going higher, in my opinion.
Terp, we were just hyping up their team, which is always a good thing. And we're not just doing that because they're coming on right now. Eric and Dan, co-managers of the Banana Stand, drafting live. Gentlemen, thank you so much for hopping on the stream. We were just praising your draft. We can see both of you. I can mess around with the layout to try and get it better situated here. But again, thank you for joining us. And how do you guys feel about your draft so far?
Pretty good, actually. I think we're both pretty happy. We've had to adjust to some things we weren't expecting, but yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far.
We were saying here, and I know you guys are about to be on the clock, so me and Terp will kind of talk over while you guys kind of decide on your pick right here. You go do that, but
yeah, we've got strategy set up, so yeah, we're good.
You guys are ready to go. This is your first rodeo.
You guys are locked in. We were just saying what we were kind of talking about. The strategy seems to be, and there's kind of two distinct ones going on. Is trying to decide do you kind of try and thread the needle and kind of go for win now while also building for the future, or there's a lot of camps that are choosing, yep, we're building long term. And there's obviously, you're going to see in these FFPC Dynasty startups, some teams are just kind of going for the win now in the first couple of years. What was your guys' strategy kind of entering tonight?
Well, we definitely, we're trying to do a little column A, little column B.
Yeah.
Right? We want to compete. We want to have a chance to win early. But we also want to be taking an eye towards the future. And, I heard you guys mention we have focused on young talent, tried to grab that anchor back early. Didn't expect Ramondre there in the fifth necessarily with what we already had and some of the options that we saw, following that up to stabilize the roster with that young talent early. But we see this as an ascending group. So
for sure.
But already done it at the same time,
Exactly. Yeah. I just to make Terp excited. I don't know if you heard it. Terp is the biggest Tony Pollard and Christian Watson guy there is.
Yeah.
Can you talk me through that pick at the 409? Because we both thought it was great value because we obviously saw probably about 3 weeks ago, Christian Watson, maybe even longer term, like a month ago plus, Christian Watson started moving up boards in redraft, which is primarily what our streams focus on. We thought he would see a bigger bump at Dynasty, but at the 409, are you in on Watson like Terp is? Because that seems great value to both of us.
Yeah, I don't know. My partner Dan, he's also big on Christian. He can't. I don't know if I unplug this, will I still be able to because then he could probably talk too.
Try it out.
What's the worst that could happen?
No worries here.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, not working? All right.
No, it works.
No, we got you.
He might not be able to hear us, Terp.
Gotcha.
All right. Can you hear me again?
Yeah, we can hear you again.
Terribly sorry about that. But
no worries
absolutely
at all.
No worries.
Yeah, just trying to bring him in on it. But yeah, no, we both really like Watson. I mean, the guy has flashed insane talent. Obviously there's some question marks with Jordan Love coming in at the helm, but we're not as concerned with that because we feel like if Green Bay decides that he's not going to be able to take him somewhere, then they'll do something else at that position, and Christian Watson will have somebody better to throw to him. So it's a gamble, obviously, but one we're willing to take with just the size, the speed, just the combination of all the things that he's got going on for him.
One thing that was most intriguing to me is I kind of wanted to hear your guys at the 209. Who were the guys kind of under consideration for you guys? Go with Drake London. Were there any other names being debated?
Oh yeah, for sure. 209. They want to know about that 209 Drake London pick. To be perfectly honest, I knew we were on the clock, and I was talking about it with him, but he didn't realize that we were actually on the clock. And I think we had about 18 seconds left when he goes, "Oh, we're on the clock." And so it was a bit of a, I don't know, panic pick. It did. We kind of had to like figure it out. But target share. Again, if they don't do well, things are going to change there pretty quick. Arthur Smith won't be there.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. Are you a Falcons fan?
No,
Definitely not.
Oh, no.
Terp just has a burning hatred at Arthur Smith and everything he did to Kyle Pitts last year.
A huge hatred.
Can totally dig that. But yeah. So anyway, it was a bit of that, but like I said, I like the target share. I like the future possibilities if they're not good. We're building for the future here as well, right? But he's going to get balls no matter what. It doesn't matter who he's getting them from. He's going to get production, and I feel like we have some people that can, and will draft some people that can buoy the roster if, for whatever reason, he's not living up to his full potential early on in the voyage that we're on, this dynasty voyage, right?
I mean, he's flashing the preseason too. I mean, you guys invested essentially you hit that the 2022 NFL draft. You said with Garrett Wilson and Drake London, you said let's run it with those receivers.
Just lovely talent. Would have liked. We had eyes on Olave too. Yeah. Okay, sorry, we're
all good. Take your time. We completely Terp more than understands this. Terp has drafted live here.
It's really difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
Terp, I'm thinking when they said the panic pick, and I can only think back to the times you've drafted live on the show, and you're talking and no clue you're on the clock with like 10 seconds left, and then you're just like, oh my god.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I'm approaching 50 years old, and I started doing this in college with some friends, and we were buying the newspaper the next day to tabulate the stats and figure out who won.
I love that. My dad did that too.
Yeah, so I am not good at this game, but I've been around it a long time. And he's been playing a while, and we decided. We've been listening to the podcast. We've been whatever, and I'm like, hey, let's check out this FFPC thing. And he's like, yeah, we've been wanting to do a dynasty, and we dipped our toes into that with like a free sleeper league, just random. Mm-hmm. But everything the platform here has to offer was enticing, and so we decided, hey, let's it's low barrier to entry. Let's see what it's like.
We love to hear that, and just in general, it's always interesting to see people make the dynasty jump, because as we've had people on the show to discuss it, just here, dynasty is just a whole different beast. You guys have a pick here coming up. You guys talk that through. We'll talk about it right after you guys make it.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll mute for a second.
Yeah, no, please, absolutely.
Go for it.
Sure. Talk amongst yourselves.
Yeah, Terp, my question for you is they went with Dallas Goedert at the 704. And again, I said any Eagle is going to go right to you as the resident Eagles diehard fan.
That's what I'm here for.
So Dallas Goedert, what is your long-term outlook for him? Obviously, Ertz was there for a while. They move him off. Is Goedert long-term future in Philadelphia? One would assume they kind of locked him up. But again, with the passing options, like how long essentially does Dallas Goedert's window there to be a successful fantasy tight end in Philadelphia?
I think his window could be as good as Zach Ertz's window was in Philly. I mean, it's hard not to like everything you see in the player. He got a little late start, obviously, with Ertz being there, but the talent's there. If he stays healthy with that offense with Ertz and obviously Brown and Smith. The target tree is real small, and that offense, they're going to be in a lot of tight games this year. The defense, you could say, got a little worse, even though they got a lot younger with a lot of talent with Carter and Smith. But, the outlook's very good on Goedert. In a dynasty format, when you're not getting one of the top elite guys, he makes a lot of sense, especially in the 7th round.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting because the guys going right ahead of him, Terp, have they listened? Have they listened to you? Because Terp's love for Antonio Gibson, your most owned player this year.
These guys are pulling my heartstrings. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, they're doing this on purpose. I love Antonio Gibson as well. Fellas, what is this?
Honestly, no. I mean,
Just pulling my heartstrings here.
hey, look, that just means I'm drafting with the expert, right? Like we're right
I
along
mean,
in step with somebody who's
I don't think
been.
there's any pick that you made so far that I would say I don't like, except I mean maybe Amari Cooper, but that's not even like that's like pulling hairs.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'll take Amari
In the
Cooper
sixth round of the Dynasty startup, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, he's still young.
I think I think there's some spots where we've reached for some people, but they're people we like better than people that we see in front of
Of course.
the selections, and everybody has their guys. Antonio Gibson, I've definitely had a man crush on him for a couple of years, and obviously you see the potential, and you just want that to be fulfilled, and sparks like visions of Lee Evans from the Buffalo Bills. I just wanted that guy to like be something, but he never
could turn out.
Never fulfilled that potential, right? But anyway, and I owned him like so many times. I had him on my team so many times. It was anyway. That's like Carry On Johnson for this guy.
Sounds like Clyde Edwards-Helaire for me.
Right.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I always say it's an abusive relationship. The amount of times I drafted him, he just let me down over and over again.
Yeah.
If you guys got one more pick, please mute yourself. Discuss again. Coming up, you guys are on deck, so and then we'll cover that. But Terp,
thank you.
He has a man crush on Antonio Gibson. The only issue is Ron Rivera has not. But I think Ron Rivera, his days are numbered in Washington, which is going to be.
I hope so.
Time. Do hope so. I mean, it's that could be bad for your Eagles.
It could be, I guess. I mean, but I don't think that's a real bad negative. I mean, I'm not. They have some talent in Washington, but they don't got anybody that I'm like, crazy about. Like, I mean,
is Sam Howell for real, Turt?
I like Sam Howell. I think Sam Howell's a player. To be honest with you, he's a guy that
I can confirm he is a player. That is correct.
I mean, he's definitely a player. Is he a good player? I think that division is going to be a lot better this year. I mean, I still see. I mean, people say I'm crazy, but I still see a path. I know how much I hate him. But I see a path for Dallas just completely blowing up this year and finishing last in that division.
I think it's possible.
I think it's possible. I mean, we all know who's going to win the division. Let's just take that out. But I mean, the Giants are going to be better. I think the Giants are the second best team in that division.
Are the Giants going to be better though? I don't know.
I think they will be. I think
the issue with the Giants is they won so many close games last year. That's assumably going to have to unless they start blowing teams out by more. That's gonna revert back to the mean, and then you kind of have a team that I think overachieved last year.
It's fair. I think Daniel Jones takes the next step. A lot of their success is going to come down to Waller staying healthy. If Waller stays healthy for, let's just say 14, 15 games a season, I think the Giants are going to be very good. But if he doesn't, then you need some of them in that receiving core to emerge. So, we'll see what comes to the Giants. But, I mean, I just think that, we talked about Antonio Gibson, Brian Robinson right now. They're kind of a timeshare. But I like Gibson better.
Eric and Dan, we're going to let you go after we discuss this pick. How does it feel drafting a quarterback who's one head injury away from being out of the league?
We're risk takers.
Sure.
We like living.
I respect that.
I love Tua, by the way. For Dynasty, it scares me a bit more, but
it does. Look, the upside there is still
immense.
Huge. Yeah. And at this part of the draft, I mean, we've waited this long. We haven't taken a quarterback. We've been trying to stack it at other positions just because of value that we've seen or things that we feel are going to build our team the way we want it to be built. And, I did hear, I think I heard he's taking martial arts and learning how to fall. Yeah. So he's not smacking his head off the turf.
I saw that too.
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. That guy, somebody's protecting him. Thank goodness. He needs that. So hopefully that translates. I mean, we're certainly going to keep that in mind with future selections coming up, making sure that we have an insurance policy of some sort. But it definitely risky, but we looked at him as one of the higher upside people that's left at this part of the draft after waiting so long.
I mean, I've said on our shows, I think you got him at QB 12. If you're looking at just immediate future, I think this is a guy, when healthy, is going to contend to be a top 5 quarterback every year. That's truly what I think. But it's just there's such an unknown with his health, and he's more susceptible to those concussions.
Absolutely.
And that's just a scary facet. So, Eric, Dan, best of luck with the rest of your draft. We're going to let you guys go so you can keep on drafting that successful team. We appreciate you guys drafting all of our guys to make us feel good.
One
very
note
excited about your outlook.
Right on.
Yeah.
Thank you. Happy to hear that for sure, being our first one going at this. But the whole we're excited about Bieniemy too, and how he's
Okay.
possibly going to
Very
use
excited.
Gibson. I know we got cut off on that with the pick coming up. So anyway, that was one of the reasonings behind that. So yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for putting this on. Thanks to everybody else that's participating in the league. We look forward to competing with you guys for years to come.
There we
Good
go.
luck,
Eric and Dan from the Banana Stand. Appreciate you guys hopping on. Terp, I'm being dead serious. That phenomenal team.
Yeah,
I think
can't
so
really
far.
say anything negative about it.
Have we had someone hop on who's had just a really awful team? I don't think so. We've gotten lucky in that
No, I
regards.
mean we've criticized some picks, but most of the guests we've had on all these shows, most of them they kind of know if their team stinks or not. And we've had some wild drafts. I remember Billy Muzio when he did that wacky start, but it made sense. It made sense. Like he put the puzzle together. It made sense. But early on, we were looking at it like, is somebody drafting his team? But looking back on it, you wouldn't want to have that roster right now.
Yeah, Eric and Dan are drafting. A lot of good teams, honestly, being drafted right now. And I think there is, in a lot of ways with Dynasty, there's a lot of ways to rationalize where in redraft, I think is less to in some respects. In Dynasty, there's a lot of positive outlooks that you could take for certain players. Terp, I'm kind of lost my train of thought if I'm being completely honest there, but
it's okay.
I was going to ask you about someone. Just escaped me. Oh, DeAndre Swift. Again, I know I'm kind of hitting the well here with the Eagles, but I'm just kind of reading into it, and you've been vocal for redraft purposes that Swift is the guy to own. It kind of feels as though he's a nice little bargain in Dynasty too, because if he can achieve his potential, and there were some things, the usage of Eagles running backs has been pretty weird in the preseason. You look at the week 2, they're kind of running all these people. Penny's not looking great. I think I more and more buy into what you had said with the fact that DeAndre Swift talent's going to win out and he's going to be their lead back. My question is, do you see the Eagles kind of what they always do is it always seems like every couple of years they're adding a new back, or can Swift kind of be productive if he achieves his talent for multiple years?
I mean, it's definitely possible. I mean, the talent we all know is there. It's just, can he put it all together? It seems like the perfect spot in Philly. We've seen all the hype that's surrounding it. It's just a question of, will he, pass Gainwell on the chart? Right now, it's him and Gainwell. I mean, Penny's kind of an afterthought right now. He hasn't looked good in the preseason. He looks like he's running in mud. It's definitely a worry. Will he make the team? Which most people thought he was going to be a breakout candidate this year on that offense before they got Swift. But I feel like Swift he's still young. He still has plenty of value when it comes to, long-term, situation with the team, especially if he has a good year this year. It's just a little bit questionable that he seems to be behind Gainwell on the depth chart right now. I mean, is there something that everyone's missing? But in a dynasty format, you're betting, where did he go in this draft? 7th round.
Yeah.
You're betting on talent, and he's a guy that I would bet on in this format. I mean, you're taking a chance that he figures it all out this year, gets a contract with the Eagles, or gets a contract where he goes somewhere else and has a little more security. It makes a ton of sense.
Real quick, just looking at the 407, this is not a discussion point because we've talked about him enough, but I was doing some prep for the show. How old do you think Calvin Ridley is?
27. Actually, no. I think I heard this. He's 24.
No, he's 28.
Ooh.
Because he came out of Alabama, I believe, older, and then he's missed like essentially 2 straight years. And he had like 3 years before that. So he's really, I believe might be like year number 6 in the NFL for him. Or I guess maybe he came out at 22 or 23. Yeah. I was just doing this because he's forever young in my head. Like it's just like a young rising.
I feel like the last time I saw him, he was a 1,000-yard receiver, like monster. And then like
1,500. Yeah. With the Falcons.
Yeah, he just kind of fell off the face of the earth. And now he is definitely we talk about players that you'd want, we always talk about, and I've heard on a bunch of different podcasts. What is one player you would love to know their stats this year? Calvin Ridley would probably be in the top of my list just to know what his end of year production looks like, because that will show so much in that offense, because we all know how good they were last year. And if they're only going to get better, if Calvin Ridley's the guy, I mean, you're talking about one of the best values in fantasy football right now. And you also could look at from the other side, if you knew his stats and they weren't great, or, if he didn't live up to the hype, I mean, third round, just landmine, which we see every year. So he's definitely somebody. Who do you think would be your answer? If you could know at the end of the season his stats, who would you pick?
Probably
CEH.
Yo, calm down. When he was saying when it was Eric or Dan, I'm blanking on who was who, when they were saying like the Lee Evans and his was Kerryon Johnson's a great name. Mine
That's
is
a great
absolutely
name.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. My answer probably is Jahmyr Gibbs.
It's fair.
Because
I would
it's
look
one
to
of
know
those,
Josh Jacobs too. Josh Jacobs is another one.
Taylor's is one. I feel like for me answering that and hearing it out loud, the Gibbs is almost more confirmation bias. Like I want to confirm that my like.
You want to
Gibbs is gonna
confirm
be
you're
a
a genius, or you want to confirm you're an idiot?
Yeah, because I feel like Gibbs, there is an avenue. Funny enough, I was all in on David Montgomery his rookie year.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an okay year, but by no means did he deliver on the value I was taking him at. By no means did he establish himself as a clearly back. I think there is a pathway for Gibbs to have a solid rookie year, but by no means deliver. But I'm trying to think. That's a great question. I'm trying to think. Gibbs would probably, like, if I like just off the top of my head, if I'm trying to see one person's stats for this upcoming year, I would say Gibbs. Dude, Derrick Henry's another one. I always sound dumb.
There's a lot of them that you could put, like
Derrick Henry's one where
Sky Moore is a good one. Like,
yeah,
you go down the list of certain guys, like, where, down the road a little bit, like we talk about Christian Watson, but like,
yeah,
Tony Pollard, Antonio Gibson, like you keep going on the list of like George Pickens, because I mean, obviously, if George Pickens has a big year, probably doesn't mean Deontay Johnson does, and he's obviously going higher. So
yeah,
there's a ton of guys you could answer that question for. I mean, my number one answer would definitely be right now would probably be Keenan Allen.
Ooh. There's some guys like I mentioned to you before. Keenan Allen's a good shout. Is like with Derrick Henry, it's more of a guy who isn't really on my radar. A guy who I've kind of consistently discounted as I'm expecting a drop off. I must be intrigued, like because he's a guy who would have way lower on my ranks. And then if I would love to see sets if he delivers again, because then I think, oh wow, like he's probably returning great value. The Steelers passing game's a great. The Steelers passing game's a great one. DeAndre Hopkins is an interesting one.
The thing with
Jalen Warren is just got drafted.
Another great one.
Another freaking great pick by the boys.
Yeah, they're killing it. The thing with Keenan Allen is like everybody believes that offense is going to take that next step, especially deep threats and all that stuff. If you tell me you get because Keenan Allen's falling in drafts right now, I don't really understand why. I've seen him slip into the fourth in a couple drafts.
Okay,
and like it would be really it'd be really, really crazy if I'm sitting there in Vegas and it's like Christian Watson and Keenan Allen, because in my head, obviously it's Christian Watson, but you start in your brain start thinking about, can I build a Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert stack here? Because it's coming up and it's gonna be a tricky one. But when it comes to Keenan Allen, he's definitely the guy that if he's healthy, you're talking about a first round pick in that offense. I mean, we know when he's on the field, he's going to produce. I mean, he's a first round pick if he's healthy all the time, in my opinion. In that offense, what I expect this year.
So your answer is Keenan Allen. Mine, I'll settle on Gibbs. I want to know how Gibbs does and just kind of confirm if my unnecessary hype is too much.
Still shocked that Gibbs is not going higher in drafts. We talk about it a bunch, but
you know who is going higher in drafts? Ty Chandler goes at RB40. He normally drafted at RB64. Go get your guy.
I mean, it makes sense, I guess. Like you're chasing upside right now. You're chasing the young talent. If you're not a believer in Alexander Mattison, which most of fantasy football, is not. But the thing that, will I draft a lot of Alexander Mattison? Probably not. But Alexander Madison's starting to get a little weird Josh Jacobs feel this year.
I think people are overthinking it just a bit. I've been feeling that as well.
And
this is a guy. There's nothing that I've seen because I've been a big Dalvin Cook owner the last couple of years, so I watched a lot of Vikings.
Yeah.
When I watch Madison, there's nothing like, oh, this guy's so much worse than Dalvin Cook. Like, I'm not watching, like, how is this guy getting snaps? I'm watching and be like, shit, this guy might be better than Dalvin Cook at times.
I just don't. Will I add him in a couple spots? Probably still not, because I'm just not a believer.
Yeah.
But I would love for them to add somebody like a Leonard Fournette. That would make me so much better, feel so much better about Madison. But if they don't add anybody, we're talking about Ty Chandler, who doesn't seem like he's taking the job. Obviously, he has the speed and all that cool stuff, but McBride, still a young player. I mean, this is a team that's going to be bad defensively, very good offensively. I don't know. I mean, if you're telling me if Madison will slip to the 7th, I don't think he ever gets there. But most of the time, he's going in this, 5th or 6th, depending on the league. But if you could tell me he slipped in the 7th, I don't know, man. I might have to click that button depending on the structure of the team. It would be really hard not to.
Again, for Dynasty, I don't know how long Madison's the back there, and beyond that, I think the issue why you can't say, oh, you're getting Josh Jacobs vibes to it is because the Vikings don't use their running backs like Josh Jacobs was used. That's a team that is one of the, I believe it might actually be the lowest in terms of running back touches. So in that regard, I just can't fully buy in. But there's part of me feels as though if he just kind of inherits what Dalvin did, I don't see how he can't return his ADP. Like, I just struggle to see the absolute hate because he might not be the sexiest pick. And maybe I'm just taking a too simplistic view, and I understand maybe the lack of touches, but it just feels like a guy with not that much competition who's been maybe not great, but consistently solid throughout his career. In the games that he did handle a full workload was phenomenal. He's playing in a great offense that should be in a lot of shootouts for the aforementioned kind of crappy defense that they have. I just think sometimes we, especially the high stakes players, tend to overthink some things. And I think Madison's fine, his ADP, but some of these slips into overt negativity towards his situation is a little bit much to me.
I agree.
Like Walmart Josh Jacobs from last year, I could very well see happening. He won't be that type of season, but a guy who I think finishes as an RB2, I think would actually be maybe one of my likely scenarios for him. So like a consistent, solid fringe, like top, I don't know, 12, not top 12, let's say like top 15. Like that wouldn't shock me.
It's in the range of possibilities. I still think it's very unlikely. He's not a guy that I'm going to be pounding the table for, but he's definitely a guy I need to start watching a little bit more when it comes to just value-based drafting and just seeing, based off the structure of my team, if he falls, like if you're asking me, am I going to take him in my main event? Probably not. Mm-hmm. But, when it comes down to, some of these best balls that'll get a little later, he's still a little banged up. I'm pretty sure he's still not practicing. So that's a worry. So hopefully he gets, people get a little scared of him. So, in the right spot, in the right structure, I'll add him. I say the same thing about Miles Sanders. He's not a guy that I love this year at all. But, you don't want to get Josh Jacobs by these guys. Because, last year I had 0.0 Josh Jacobs and it didn't work out. Because a guy like Josh Jacobs was a league winner and puts you so much of an advantage in leagues, no matter how your rest of your draft went. So
I think the more rightful concern that I can understand is Madison has been a guy in the past couple of years that he also gets beat up. He's dealt with kind of nagging injuries throughout the season and now kind of maybe inheriting.
And the coach does not love giving running backs the ball all the time. Like he's not going to be getting the 80, 90% workload some of these other guys are getting. I could see him splitting with somebody. The question is who that somebody is. And it's a big question right now because I could also see Kirk Cousins throwing the ball 50 times a game because, they got tons of weapons. But if Madison's out there, he's going to be valuable. He's going to be valuable. It's just a question of, are you a believer or not? And that's definitely the one I'm probably wrestling with more than any as we get closer to Vegas. Not something I'm ever going to turn around on, like do a 360 like some players I've done a 360 on. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's definitely a tricky situation in my opinion.
Terp, what do you think the most likely Damian? I don't know if there's anyone too replicable. I was looking at Roschon Johnson went here in the 10th round, the back end of that draft. I was wondering, I saw a tweet that said it was like true or false. Roschon Johnson is going to be this year's Dameon Pierce. And I think it's not as a great comparison because Dameon Pierce by this time was really shooting up draft boards while Roschon kind of has clear competition. But in terms of that guy who goes kind of in the day 3 of the NFL draft, but kind of asserts himself to be kind of a workhorse back, is that going to be Roschon Johnson, or do you think that's going to be a running back by committee for the entire year?
I see a lot of running back by committee. I mean, I like Roschon. I like him as a talent. I love him as a dynasty prospect. But he's a guy that I was drafting a lot earlier. To me, he didn't land the best spot. But, I mean, the potential's there. This guy could be somebody that is starting for you in the fantasy pros or, the main event championships when the money's getting, decided at the end. Will he be a guy who's going to be clicking that button early? Probably not. Probably not for a while. You might need an injury to Foreman or Herbert for him to get like real work. But he's not a guy that I'm targeting a ton, but I see the path to fantasy greatness. So he's definitely a guy that I won't ignore. Love the player, just the situation's a little funky.
What was weird is I remember talking, I think we did might have been a Fantasy Pros, might have been a Best Ball right after the draft. And we both loved the Roschon landing spot, or at least I did, because I'm like, oh, I like that offense. I think he asserts himself. I was a big fan. And he just didn't kind of run away with the job. I thought you would see Deontay Foreman for sure fall away. You would see kind of Khalil Herbert, maybe as a change of pace. And Roschon, you're hearing all these positive reports, and you just didn't get that. So his ADP in kind of seemingly all these formats has stabilized in like the roughly between the 10th to 11th round, sometimes even the 12th. I still think he's going to have some big games for Chicago. I do think it's going to be one of those situations all year where you never know which guy is going to be the lead back that week. And then there's the Justin Fields scenario. So it's just going to be a weird spot. So I didn't love the comp. The Dameon Pierce, people in fantasy, we love doing who's the blank player this year. The Dameon Pierce thing to me is going to be hard to replicate, right?
Really hard to replicate, especially at that position this year. I mean, you obviously see the top two guys. You have a couple guys with some potential besides that, but I don't know if there's a Dameon Pierce out there this year.
Like a true day 3 pick, because I feel like we've seen guys in the past. Antonio Gibson's rookie year, but he was I believe round 3 and high in round 3. So you're at least investing day 2 capital. But I mean, I'm sure there's more than I'm just not thinking of in this current moment who have kind of fit.
What round did Devin A-Chain get drafted in?
3rd. He was 3rd, but he's another one, right? Where even if he didn't get hurt, he didn't. Like Pierce, by this point, there is no one competing with him. Obviously,
I could see a Tajay Spears possibly. If something happens to Henry,
but that's by injury. Like it's just hard for a day 3 guy running back to come into a team, and then the competition falls away. And it's like, oh, this guy's the lead back, and he kind of goes from
Bigsby.
No, because ETN's no. Like the point is, I think with Pierce too is it's rare to get a day 3 pick, and his structure. Not structure, his situation coming into the league is also crazy. Like he didn't get a ton of carries, so he wasn't worn down. And then it was kind of the question for him, and it kind of became a positive was the fact that he didn't have a ton, right? He doesn't have a tread on the tires, essentially. So I don't know. He's just a weird situation. Because I guess my point is you look at the guys like Kendre Miller, you mentioned A-Chain, they're coming into situations with at least like known commodities. While Dameon Pierce, even when he was drafted, he's got to beat out Rex Burkhead. And then I'm also talking about the positive training camp reports and the boost. I don't see that happening for any of the rookie running backs this year.
I agree.
Of the rookie running backs outside of Gibbs, I'll include Charbonnet too, because he's in a weird spot. Outside of Gibbs and Bijan, which of the rookie running backs are you most confident in carving out multiple successful fantasy years? That's a big question to spur on you. Charbonnet feels like the answer.
Guys. Charbonnet's probably the popular answer, but I'll eliminate him just because it seems too easy.
Okay.
I mean, Devin A-Chain is a guy that I love coming out of college. And I think the fit is perfect in Miami. If they don't get into Jonathan Taylor sweepstakes long term, I mean, I think he could be a guy that really takes that job and runs with it. Kendre Miller's another one. I mean, everything seems to be lined up really well. With the Saints. I mean, Kamara starting to get up there, starting to wear down a little bit. Jamal Williams is nothing more than a backup running back, really. So they'd be my top 2 answers if I had a pick. Besides that,
no, you can stop there. I don't need any more. Kendre Miller, I think, would be the answer outside of like the top 3, because that's the team we've seen with the Saints. I know Kamara was a round 2 pick, but so they draft their rookies. They kind of insert them in that first year, and then they kind of give them the reins. I think that is a track for Miller. The Roschon, I would have liked to see some more positivity towards There was one name I had. You mentioned Spears as a guy maybe with
Tank Bigsby's another one. I mean, we all know what I think of ETN.
Spears might be a good guess because there's just all the rumors that Henry, not for his own doing or want to, but it might be out of Tennessee. Just they're trying to undergo a rebuild, get off that contract, or just kind of value still hot, or eventually his decline's going to come. And they seem to love Tyjae Spears.
Yeah.
So him and Kendra Miller are probably my top two of guys to be kind of consistent fantasy producers come 2025, 2026. And we've seen it for a year on end. There's some interesting names out there for sure. The running back, and I'm not asking for any predictions because we don't know, but there's always the guys who come literally out of nowhere. The Austin Ecklers, with the running back position the way it is.
Guys, you don't even know their name. I mean,
exactly right now.
Dynasty drafters are a different breed because they know all these deep guys that are fighting for roster spots right now that they're taking shots on. But some of these names, the Evan Hulls of the world, guys like that are just deep in drafts that you're not even thinking about in redraft or best ball or anything. They're the guys that could be household names in a couple of years. I'll ask you the same question.
You mentioned
a different position.
Okay.
Receiver. Obviously, we have the top.
Josh Downs. Josh Downs.
Mine's Marvin Mims, but I like Josh Downs too. Especially
my worry with Josh Downs is the situation. Is if Richardson is the quarterback, I'm like, well, I hear, but I had a first round grade on Josh Downs. I still kind of like the spot because for all Richardson, I think there's two pathways for even this year fantasy relevance for Josh Downs, and that is. Well, there's one, the drawback is Anthony Richardson, when he's kind of panicked or rushed, it's just throw it up to Pierce or Pittman. Or it's Josh Downs is one of the best route runners out of college this year, and he's just going to be open short, and Richardson will just check down. And Downs has shiftiness. So I cut you off. I apologize. I just had to get that out. But Josh Downs would be my answer.
I love that answer. He'd probably be my number 2 behind Marvin Mims. I mean, I love the Marvin Mims situation. I mean, I think he has a clear-cut path to be – a starting receiver by the end of the year. I mean, Cortland Sutton's a name we talk about 100 times, and I mean, he let everyone down last year. So, if Mims, it just comes down to Sean Payton. He traded up for him. Does he believe in him enough to get him out there in meaningful snaps early in the season? I think he does, and I think Marvin Mims has a great chance to impress this year.
Can I give you a really deep cut for a running back who I think is going to be prove fantasy relevant for at least?
Give me the conference. See if I can get it.
Your division.
My division.
Yeah. We have not ever mentioned this name on any one of our streams.
Rico. You got from Dallas?
No. Chris Rodriguez.
Okay.
Out of Washington. My guy from Kentucky.
You love your Kentucky guys.
No, I do, but it's granted it's what I watch, it's what I know. But this is a guy who I think he fits. I think he's better than Brian Robinson. Now, granted, I think that dude, Chris Rodriguez, mauled the SEC, right? I think kind of like Levis, although Levis I would have concern about. Chris Rodriguez struggled because he played behind statistically the worst offensive line in Power 5, let alone SEC, which hurt him. But if you look at the years prior when he had a great O-line, I think that's a guy who, if he makes the team in Washington, which I think he will. I think he fits their philosophy. I think he would he won't have the speed, maybe even the receiving chops, elusiveness Antonio Gibson, which is kind of a reason we're so high on Antonio Gibson. He doesn't possess that, but he possesses that. You need 5 yards, he'll go and get it. He'll be a workhorse around the back. He was a guy, there was an absurd stat, I don't remember off the top of my head. The amount of times that Chris Rodriguez in his entire college career got tackled for a loss of yardage was in the teens.
That's crazy with as bad as the offensive line was
for your career. At least that was either career or entering last year, which was still 3 years of college film. So that's it. Terp, how about we do this? Terp and we both have kind of commitments we got to get to, which is unfortunate. We didn't know how long it would be this draft would go. So how about Terp? We go through round 15. We keep covering it through round 15. We'll post the full draft board on our Twitter page. For those who want to see the last 5 rounds, we apologize for that, but just sometimes life gets in the way. So we gave you probably the best 15 rounds we could. So we got one more round in us. I just gave you my deep cut in Chris Rodriguez. Terp, let's just keep on. I want to almost talk about some names that maybe we don't as much on some of our redraft. I want to ask you, because I've been seeing some buzz. I was reading the Athletic article today, and they said arguably the most impressive guy in Niners camp was your guy, Tyrion Davis-Price. Put on a lot of weight.
Not falling for it again. I mean,
not falling for it again at all.
It's there's a path.
There's something there. There's some smoke there that I think you have to at least. He's free in drafts.
I'm in a camp right now where I believe that Christian McCaffrey will not get run into the ground early in the season.
Yes.
Until they need him in big spots and big games, he's not going to be out there, 80% of the snaps. The question is, who's going to be behind him? Elijah Mitchell is an extremely talented running back. He's a guy that will be a thorn in Christian McCaffrey's owners all year. The question we all know is, can he stay on the field? He hasn't shown that. But when he's on the field, he's annoying. The question also is if Christian McCaffrey, if he's not on the field, can somebody like Jordan Mason or TDP take his workload and still be annoying? Last year, the answer was no. This year, I mean, you're hearing a lot of positive press from camp, but it's like the Philadelphia thing. All I keep hearing is Trey Sermon this, Trey Sermon that, and he goes out there in a preseason game, fumbles, and then scores a touchdown. This is what you're going to get from these guys. Is there a world where TDP could be a handcuff to Christian McCaffrey or a guy that, we're bidding money on during the season? Of course. But I just have my doubts. I didn't like what I saw last year. I mean, with that team, it's really hard for a running back to stink. And when he was out there, he pretty much did stink. So I'm still betting on Mitchell. He's falling in drafts right now. I'll take my shot with, we always talk about couple games, a couple windows of, good play from a guy. And if something happens to Christian McCaffrey, I mean, these guys could be the gold mine of fantasy football.
The thing on Elijah Mitchell is people said it for years. There were guys like Keenan Allen now granted last year he was actually hurt, but years Keenan Allen had the injury prone title. And you say, how can we give this guy injury prone when he has a lacerated kidney? That's not injury prone. Guys like Rashad Penny and Elijah Mitchell are actually injury prone. Elijah 100%. Mitchell cannot stay healthy every year. I mean, he's banged up, and it's not just little things. It's knee, the MCL's tearing, all that. The thing with the Niners, those backups, that's intriguing to me is the few weeks Elijah Mitchell and Christian McCaffrey worked together. It wasn't just change of pace. They were borderline splitting carries. It was 55 splits. It helps that offense, especially the run game, was so dynamic that it didn't really matter that McCaffrey still produced for McCaffrey owners, and Elijah Mitchell had some nice splashes. But it just makes you wonder these positive reports because, I mean, you were high on TDP. Oh, yeah.
Too high.
They're listening. Chris Rodriguez goes. I'm just saying it's obviously TDP went too high, but Jordan Mason didn't establish it, and Elijah Mitchell was hurt. And my point is, you can tell me if I'm wrong because you were on him more. Could be revisionist history. The buzz I'm hearing this camp for TDP was higher than anything I heard last year. He had some buzz.
Last year you heard nothing. And last year you just heard of his draft capital, Kyle.
Exactly.
That's the drum beat that you heard. This year hearing a little bit more positive, he's starting to figure it out a little bit more. He's definitely a name to watch, and definitely a name to watch in the next couple of weeks. I mean, there's a path. It's not a path I'm probably going to be taking, but there's definitely a path, and he's a guy that you need to watch if something happens to Mitchell. You're probably going to have to bid a lot of fab money to get him, but he's a guy that, if something happens to Mitchell, he could just take that job from Mitchell real quick if he's improved as much as, the drum beats that you keep hearing have said.
At some point, it's always an interesting question. The Niners gave up on Trey Sermon. It was the same round 3 capital after 1 year. Mm-hmm. They didn't do that with TDP. Maybe this is our last question. We'll get out of here, Terp. Just in any format, how much do you weigh where a team took a player in terms of just you see they invested a 3rd round pick in him? Is that kind of what they saw something in him and they're great at kind of developing running back talent? I'm going to try and maybe take a flyer on TDP essentially super late in these drafts because of the Niners history and that capital. Or does that go out the window after 1 year? Or rookie year, or he didn't do anything. I'm giving up on him. I'm surprised the team isn't. Or how much does old draft capital that teams use on these players weigh your mind in the years following? Really, year 2.
I think it definitely matters, but I think it doesn't matter as much as you think because they clearly didn't believe in him that much because they brought in Christian McCaffrey. So when you have Christian McCaffrey, you can develop guys very easily because there's no pressure on them. The question is when they get thrown in there and take the Mitchell role, can he produce? I have my doubts, but the draft capital's there, the coaching staff's there, the running game's there. All the positives are there. Is the player any good? And a team like the 49ers, they need to win now. There's no questions about developing players and all that stuff. They went after McCaffrey. They went after all these weapons, defensively in the offseason. So I'm still out on TDP, but he's definitely a name. Like we always talk about, like popular names week one. He could be a popular name week one that you're spending some fab money on if things go haywire.
Terp, that's going to do it for us. As we said, unfortunately, we have to get out of here. So we apologize to all that we can't cover the full draft. We will post the draft board on the FFPC Twitter, showing kind of the completed draft. We thank you to all the owners who participated. Thanks, Scoundrel, for popping on at the start, discussing some of his fantasy strategy. We appreciate Eric and Dan from the Banana Stand out of the 4 spot for hopping on and discussing some of their picks live. Terp will be back Sunday night, I believe at 7. It's either 7 or 10 as always. It's one of the two. We'll post it on the Twitter covering a main event draft. Balky will be live from Kentucky Friday night for the Kentucky Fantasy Football State Championship with a couple of guests on there. And then Fantasy Pros Championship, as always, is Tuesday. So, again, a lot of live draft coverage. And then in not exactly, but just over 2 weeks, we'll be at least, I think there's probably one in the books because we're going to be busy in there. You're going to be drafting. I'm going to be working and doing a bunch of things. But we're going to do kind of like last year. The plan is to cover at least one of the live drafts, preferably one of those big buy-in, maybe 5K.
That 10K league might be the winner. There's a couple 3K, 5K leagues.
Sure. One of those entry fees in the thousands for sure will be covered, the live draft board. We thank all who tuned into our first Dynasty Startup Draft coverage. We'll be back. Me and Terp, I should say, will be back Sunday night covering a main event draft. Keep you posted on our emails that we send out on the FFPC. We'll announce it as well as Twitter, the exact time. Balky will be back Friday night. High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour live from Kentucky. That's going to do it for myself and Terp. We'll see you guys Sunday night.
See you Sunday.